Okay, for everybody on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and I welcome you to the show. This is show CIB.10, and that's creating a consulting or building a consulting or a improvement business. And it really is an improvement business, but I'm not going to call it an improvement business because I don't want anybody to think that we're building houses. All right, so we're going to start the broadcast here very shortly in about 30 seconds. The other thing to tell you is the show notes are not in because I've had one of those rather hectic days. And we're doing a startup here with IBGR .network. And we've got a summit coming up, which I'm going to talk about here when we go live, that you really want to go to. And it'll explain how everything works. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you through my notes of what I've built. Okay. I'm going to stop here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go live. Okay. Looking forward to it, and it ought to be fun. I get to talk about something I love. Well, now here we are. We are live across the world, and we're not only live on radio on IBGR.network, but we're also live here on Facebook and on LinkedIn. And so what's today's show? Well, we're doing a series on building a consulting firm for all of you out there who want to start one, or number two is you've got one, and what can you pick up from listening to the show? Now, today, it's going to be totally focused on the startup. In fact, the name of the show today is Starting from Scratch. If you were going to build a consulting firm right now today and you were going to start on it at this moment in time, what would you do? All right. So this is CIB.10, and that's building from scratch. And CIB stands for Building a Consulting Firm, and 10 is the 10th show in the series. Now, I don't have the show notes up for everybody. I just having one of those mornings. Nothing worked. I didn't get a chance to get it done. I have it here in front of me, but I don't have it in front of you. But I will when the show is over. So that'll mean you just got to go back to the show notes. So, but let me take you there. IBGR.network. That's IBGR.network. IBGR stands for a call sign, just like any other radio station, and that is the International Business Growth Radio .network. International, we're heard in 178 countries around the world. BG stands for Business Growth of the IBGR. 24/7, we provide, well, no, I take that back. Now it's 22/5, 22 hours a day, 5 days a week, plus the weekend, which is 24/2, is that 2 hours a day, we provide the latest news. So if you're looking for what's going on in Europe, in the tech startup scene, our partners at Startup Radio or StartupRad.io will be there to provide some assistance to you. And that comes on reference time. In this particular case, it's New York. But if you go to IBGR.news, you'll see all the broadcast times. And they are on at 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening, New York time. I'm on at 6:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the evening. And what I cover is global news. And really what it's doing is it's turning into a trends analysis. Okay, so having said that, you're at the website, IBGR.network. It's our call sign. Oh, by the way, IBGR, the R stands for radio. The difference between us and a regular radio station is that they use a broadcast tower and we use the internet. IBGR.network is a name, our URL, and our broadcast frequency. When you get there, you will find it under notes, okay? And then just look for CIB.10. All right, let me go no further than that. Okay, so here's something that we've been working on for a while, and I always knew it was true, but I just never. It's one of those when you do something a lot, sometimes you come to a different conclusion than you ever came to before, and that is really where I am here. And that is all startup businesses are not businesses. All startups are experiments. In other words, you don't know what's going to work until you do it. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to build a large organization and get really structured. What I've done over the years when I looked at the development of companies and what stages of growth they go through is that there are things that you need to build today. Now, I've identified 10 core processes that companies will have to build over time. Excuse me here, something in my throat, but I think I can work through it without hitting the cough button. And so a mature company will have built all 10. So let me give you the 10, and then I'm going to go to the ones you need to concern yourself with. Well, in strategy, there are two areas. Okay, so number one is more of the strategic issue of what market you're going into, what's your offer, who your customers, and all the things you need to do. Because if you don't do it, then you really can't do any marketing. We're going to talk about that. The other part of strategy is more into the budgeting side. And I separate that from finance for the simple reason is that this really isn't a financial decision. This is you looking at your resources, looking at your strategy, looking at your business plan, and not the one you run right for the banks. Okay, not that type of business plan, but the ones that you're going to write for yourself. Like I keep mine, and I'll just hold this up for you to see. I have a book like this. It has our business plan in it. And every day, the first thing I do in the morning is I look at where are we in terms of things we got to get done. And the last thing I look at night is what didn't we do and what's on the docket for tomorrow. So now on the budgeting side, the other part of strategy is simply I'm now going to start allocating resources to the plan on what it's going to happen. We're not going to talk about that today. The second one is financial. We are going to talk about one of the two. One financial process is what's called financial accounting. And financial accounting is setting up your QuickBooks, setting up or whatever you're going to use. Okay. We are going to talk about that briefly, but I'm not going to go into detail other than I'm going to tell you better do it. The other part of the financial process you got to set up, and that one is what we call activity-based costing. In other words, what you need to do is once you've built the infrastructure and you've got your processes laid out, you have to basically take every step in the process and you have to burden it with its true cost. You've got a variable cost, which is whatever it costs you to make the thing, whether it's a product or service, something has to be produced. And so you've got the cost of that variable. Then you have the fixed cost of the operation, the building you're in, the insurance you got to pay, which is, you got to pay it whether you have no customers, you have 1,000 customers. And then the third part of this is you're going to burden each one of these with a margin. And when we talk about compensation, not today, but later on, then that will make sense because what you want to do is you want to build a system in your organization where all comp is at least everybody in the company at least has something variable in terms of what they get paid, whether they're salaried or whether they're on wages. The third one is on marketing and sales, which is OneFlow. And I put those two together because marketing has two objectives. One is you want to get your brand out there, number one, and number two, the second thing you want to accomplish is that you want to get leads into the funnel. Now, here is kind of the way I break this down. On the brand side and creating awareness, there's really nothing you can do to really measure the effectiveness of your marketing. Here is what you're going to have to get done is simply you're going to do it on faith. But if people don't know about you, it's practically impossible to be part of the buying decision. So that branding, you allocate some money on that type of marketing, and I don't want to say you hope for the best, but you just say, I got to do it. Now, on the other side of marketing is the creation of qualified leads, which is something you can measure and should measure. Otherwise, you don't know whether you're using, let's say you're promoting in Facebook or you're doing something in LinkedIn or you're doing email campaigns. You don't know if they're working unless you get that. And the goal of that part of marketing is to put qualified leads into the sales funnel. Then in sales, you need a process of how you're going to work them out. And I find what works better on this first process is marketing and sales are a continuation of the same thing. Now, the second process, really, you could hook to the first, is on the service side. And now that I've won the accounts, what am I doing to service them to keep them happy with what we're delivering? But also, after the fact, how do I use that to upsell? All right, so that's the next two. Then you have the production system. One of them is how are you making whatever it is that you're making or you're delivering as a service. So you have the production and service delivery process. The second one you have, which we're not going to talk about the first one today. We're going to talk about the second one. And the second one is the process of how you develop new products and services. You see, in large corporations, it's you build the process. Let me see, where's my hand? You build a process. Let me go over here. There we are. You build a process, and then you have new product development. I get my hands crossed. Okay, you got it? Okay, so that's how the flow goes. But in a startup, you actually have to start with new product and service development. All right, and then The next set you have is on HR. You have the issue of how do you onboard, select, develop, train talent. How do you get them up to speed? We are not going to deal with that one today. But the other part of that, and this is the last of the 10 processes you have to build, is this is around your compensation plans. And it's performance management, really, but it's more than performance management. It's not just making sure that people are getting things done that they need to do, and what is the system of having conversations, because performance management really is nothing more than forced conversations, and you're tracking what happened, and you're getting some metrics of it. But really the big part of that is you use that to determine how to pay. Now, we're not going to take those. The ones that we're going to take today is financial and marketing and sales, and we're going to take a new product and service development, because if I'm going to start, those are the things I have to put into place. Now, if you look at how this rolls out, let me give you the 4 that we're going to talk about, and I have an additional one that I'll throw in, and one is financial. I don't think I need to say any more than when you start this business, make a decision on what your financial accounting software package is going to be. I would say software, but really nowadays we're doing everything on a platform. So for example, if you're a QuickBooks person, use QuickBooks. I don't use QuickBooks for the simple reason that it doesn't help me do activity-based costing, which I don't need to do now. It's going to be later on in the process. So I'm using something like Xero, which is Xero, but it's pronounced Zero, and it allows me to do activity-based costing. But I'm not telling you what to get. What I'm saying to you is you need to get that in place, and that's one of the first things you got to establish. The second thing you got to get in place is your CRM system, your customer relationship management system, because this is going to cover marketing, sales, and service. So those 2 platforms you need to put into place, and my recommendation is buy them at the same time. Why? Because you want the financial accounting talking to the CRM, and you want the CRM talking to a financial accounting, because if you pull up a customer account in your CRM and say, okay, where are we? If they've made any purchases, they made any expenditures, what have they purchased in the past? All that data is going to be in there, because CRMs typically don't enter that data directly. Okay. And on the other hand, if I'm looking at somebody's financial performance and I'm looking at an account and how is it performing, the CRM data is going to show up in the financial accounting piece. Now, let me put those aside for a minute. And let's talk about, you've got them in place. We'll come back to the CRM in a minute. I want to go to the strategy and marketing. That is a critical process here, because really, if you don't know who you're selling to, and you have a pretty good sense of what you're selling, because if you're starting a consulting firm, you by definition have made the decision of what the product or service offer is. Now, we've talked about how to put together a practice. And I think that's CIB shows 2 and 3, which, by the way, we do have video on. But you can also just go to the website ibgr.network, and any page that you find, you'll see a new choice for business search. Put in CIB.02 and CIB.03. That should give you everything on the practice. And what the practice areas were is I gave you where the consulting industry is currently at. And not so much that you have to copy it, but to give you a sense of it, because there are 6 main practice areas, and then each one of those have anywhere from 4 to about 12 subdomains that you can engage in. And so based upon your expertise, based upon what you know, because if you're going to talk to a customer, if you're talking to large corporate accounts, then your academic credentials matter. If you're talking to smaller businesses, not so much, because now what they're going to want to know is what your experience. The big corporations want to know that as well, but you don't have that ticket punch requirement in there. And so based upon your expertise, perhaps your education, but certainly where you've been in the past, things that you have done, you need to make a decision of what practices you're going to be in, whether it's strategy and OD, it's IT, it's operations management, which is production, whether it's HR, whether it's finance. You need to make those marketing and sales. You need to make the decision of what is your offer. We've covered that. I'm not going into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that you made that decision. Now, on the other hand, if you haven't, then you need to go back and take a review of that and you find that looking at those 2 shows is insufficient, then go ahead, whether you're on LinkedIn or you're on Facebook, put it into the comment area. I'm not going to respond to it during the show, but I'll come back and we'll handle that one-on-one. All right. The other one you have to build is your new product and service development process. How are you going to build the first thing? Because once you build it the first time, and it works, you're going to kind of want to put it into, I wouldn't say carve it into stone, but you certainly want to make it firmer than Jello, in that becomes you actually have built the first one. As I said, there's 2 processes around production, whether you're producing products or services. One is managing the process you have. You don't have one right now. So you go to number 2 and you say, okay, how am I going to develop this new thing? And the process that you use to do that will then answer the first one. All right. So to give you a sense for how this would go is you do financial number 1, you do CRM number 2, number 3, you do strategy and marketing. Number 4, you do product development. Then you come back and you go back and you look at strategy. This is kind of iterative because it's not linear. You're not going to go, let me see, where's my hand? There we go. You're not going to go from 1 to 10 and stop. You're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then go back and loop around. And then you go to 4, 5, 6, and then loop around. Because each time as you work through this, you're going to get a more finite answer, a clearer answer to what you need. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you through the process of how to build that new product or service. Right? So you're building a company. So let's go back and review where we are. You're going to build a consulting firm for the first time. That's who I'm talking to. If you have a consulting firm, then the way to look at this is use this as a check. Use this as a check against what you currently have. All right. So let's go. And then product and service development, I'm going to be using the principles of Agile, which we have already talked about in one of the shows. I don't know if it's 5 or 6, but it's in there. And again, all you got to do is you go to our website, ibgr.network, and where you see the search bar, put in Agile, A-G-I-L-E, and you'll probably get more show notes than you want to read. By the way, there's 2,300 pages of show notes in there. That's what we've produced at the IBGR network in terms of supportive information for you. All right. Now, so product and service development using the principles of Agile. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, you want to make a list of the project steps. And the project steps are pretty simple. One is you've got a research step in there. All right. Well, really, let's start at the beginning. My mistake. You want to start with what's the project plan, lay it out. Step number 2 is going to be doing your research. And then from the research, you're going to have a list of problems that you're going to have to work through. And the beauty of Agile is that it doesn't presuppose you know the answer when you start. You see, in other words, right now, you don't know, other than you have a vague picture of what you're going to offer. You don't know anything about the customer, the market, or anything of that nature. So it's pretty difficult to say, okay, this is what we're going to sell. So as you work your way through it, you answer the first question. The first question then allows you to answer the second question or solve the second problem. The answer to that allows you to solve the third one. The answer to that allows you to solve the fourth one. You can see how that thing flows down. And Agile is a perfect process, and I would recommend that besides our notes, if you want to get up to speed and run a consulting firm, because I'm not thinking about you just having it's you selling your services. I'm thinking about you're building a consulting operation where you're going to have multiple people in your firm. Then what you're going to need here is you're going to need a methodology to consistently do this. And Agile works for new product development. Agile is probably the best. So you got a project plan, you got research, you've got a set of problems that you need to solve, and then you come to the test function. In other words, you are now going to take this product, and most of you have heard me use this term before. You probably have heard it from other people. It's called MVP or MVS, the minimally viable product. If what you're producing is a product like a do-it-yourself course, or MVS, minimally viable service, which means this is a service you're going to provide to other people, so that you're going to test that with an account. Now you're sure that you're 85% right. You test it with the account. You modify as you go. And I'm not going to tell you fake it till you make it here, but understand until you do the first one, you're not sure that you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. So with the first account, this is where you're really going to understand what you've put together. When that is done, then the next stage in the agile process is that now you do an upgrade to it. You take everything that you learned and you do the upgrades to it. And now you have a product or service that's ready for release, so that now you can go out and you can put some marketing dollars behind it. And when you get on the phone with somebody selling, you're going to be selling with perhaps just slightly more confidence than you did the first time. All right, so that's the overview. Now, I put down, to me, 10 steps here. I thought about if I was starting from scratch today in my consulting firm, and I built 5. So I've done this before. And trust me, the radio station is a consulting company. And you think about what we do here. We basically offer you insights and tools on how to fix your business. Now, the only difference between what we're doing on the air and you as a consulting firm is that you're not on the receiving end of a podcast, which we produce, or a live show. You're the one who's doing the live show or the podcast. All right. So here are the problems as I see them, and then I'm going to take you one by one. And we probably can knock off 1 or 2 before we go to our first break. All right. So number 1 is the list of the project steps. I'm going to give you those. I want to lay those out, and I want to determine kind of timeframes on this. The term we're going to use is I'm going to lay out my sprints. In agile terminology, a sprint is a time-bound period of time. Let's say it's I don't want to say a month because there's too many here. Let's say it's a week. We just use a week right now. Now, it's going to vary when you look at what the task ahead of you. You're going to vary these based upon what you believe is the perceived time. But the beauty of it is it forces you to get it done so you can move on. Because when you answer the first problem, the first question, you now are ready to take on the second one. And so as you flow through this, it's going to get clearer and clearer. My experience with using Agile is when you're about 70% of the way through, you begin to get a very accurate picture of what it is that you need to do, okay? So step number 2 is research. Step number 3 is what is your offer? Or problem number 2 is growing your markets, okay? Problem number 3 is targeting industries and accounts. Number 4 is profile of your perfect customer. Number 5 is building your value ladder, which is something we talked about earlier. Number 6 is creating a marketing and sales process. Now, I will talk you through what we have built. Ours will be a little bit different than yours, but I will give you a sense of that, and that will be in the show notes. After that, then you want to update your CRM to make sure that as you built this process for marketing and sales, that it's captured, okay? And all CRMs are customizable in terms of the steps that you need to go through, the categories, the tags, etc., so that you can say, okay, how many do we have at step 3 in the marketing or sales funnel? And then finally, the last one I have is the 10th step here is the test. All right. So list of project steps. All right. I gave you those. Those are the ones that I would use. Number 2 is research. Now, here is what you've got to be able to do. And it's not that difficult. 20 years ago, this would have cost you a great deal of money and taken a great deal of time, simply because without the internet, most of this is not available. Now, one place you could look, and I would recommend that if you can afford it, is to get a subscription to Hoover/Dun & Bradstreet. All right. Now, Hoover's and Dun & Bradstreet, when I was in the industry, were separate entities. And what they do is they give you great industry information, and they give you great information about specific companies. Now, when you Hoover's is better for big corporations if that's what you're selling. If you're selling to smaller companies, Dun & Bradstreet's a little bit better. Now, the data in some cases a little suspect on Dun & Bradstreet because it's self-reporting. But for example, if I want to get credit, I need to set up a Dun & Bradstreet account if I'm really looking for credit. If I'm looking for business credit, because they're going to say, well, what's your Dun & Bradstreet number? So that they can take a look at what you've got filed. And that's part of what they're going to do, their due diligence. So if you're going to have to file it, then you might as well get it. And if you don't have the money to afford the subscription, then buy reports as you need them. And those are inexpensive. I think they're about $100 a report. All right. So my research is going to be on the following. What markets are growing? If the market's not growing, why are you selling into it? Now, you could have a good reason why you're not selling into that market. Now, the market in this particular case would be industries, and this also would be regions. So if you're going to build a global operation, then you want to look at what's going on around the world and where are the growth industries. So, for example, if you're listening to IBGR.news, what you would know is that if you were going to sell internationally, consulting to crypto, blockchain, fintech, financial technology, peer-to-peer type money exchange is huge right now. The vast majority of venture capital around the world is going into Africa and India to develop this. Not so much in the US and Europe because the restrictions are there that make it a little bit more difficult, but that's happening. But I'm not telling you where to go in terms of that this is the place that I would build my consulting firm around. Rather, what I would do is simply say, what are the trends out there? And that's what the markets research is going to tell you. What industries, what areas, what geographic regions are growing? Just like if I was looking solely at the United States, I would probably not be looking at markets in California or New York unless there's a huge need that I need to fix. And because those states are not doing as well economically, that may make sense to me. All right. So I'm going to do my research. So I'm going to look for a growing market. That's number one. Number two is I'm going to look for industries within that market that are doing well. Okay. Number three, I'm going to look for companies in those industries. So you've got a growing market. I'm going to be looking at industries. I'm going to go into finance. I'm going to go in automotive. I'm going to go into service. I'm going to go into pharmacies. You choose, because part of that decision is going to be the story that you've got to tell when you get into the sales process is how you know something about that industry. It can't solely be from research. It's got to be from your practical experience. Okay, we're coming up to the break. And so one thing I want to say to you, and I'm going to come back to this, we've got a summit that we are putting on next week on the 14th of September, and it's going to be on from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the evening, New York time. And if you want to know what we're doing and what's going on and how you can build your company, regardless of what the company is, you need to go there. And it's in the show notes. So all you got to do is click the link and you can take a look at it. All right. So with that, you're listening to IBGR.network. That's IBGR Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for the show. This is show or podcast, depending on how you're getting it, is CIB number 10. And this is on how do you build a consulting firm. And we're talking specifically about how do I build it from scratch. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in 2.5 minutes. Okay, for everybody on. All right, so all this will be in the notes. I know I'm heavy on the content, but I'm always heavy on the content because what I don't want to do is I don't want to waste your time. I'm not really into the knowledge part of business. If you need knowledge, you can get it. I think what most of you are concerned with, what I'm concerned with, when I go to a website, I look at a webinar, I want applications, I want tools. Give me the stuff that I need to use, and I'll teach myself what I need to know. Or as I look at the first one, what else do I need to pick up? All right, so when we come back, I'm going to now drill this down a lot more finite. And like I said, the show notes are not up. So if you're listening as a podcast or as a replay, they'll be there. If you're listening to this live, I apologize, but I am running this firm, and I've got a number of responsibilities. We got the summit coming up, and my computer just was not cooperative this morning. So the things I needed to get done, like write your show notes, just didn't happen. Okay. All right. Other than that, if you want to stick some comments in, they should pop up on my screen. and I'll try to answer them before we go back on the air. We got about 1 minute, just a little bit more, if you got any comments. Other than that, the other recommendations I would give you is that both in LinkedIn and Facebook, we have a private group. And the private group is where we hand out the tools and the information that you need. So if you're at Facebook, IBGR Network, which if you're watching this on Facebook, obviously you're right there. But if you're listening over the radio and you want to get into one of our groups and you're a Facebook person, go to IBGR Network. That's our handle. When you get to the business page, you'll see build your business or build my business today. I keep forgetting which pronoun it is, but it's directed at you. And so if you join that group, then a lot of the tools that we're talking about here that I'm talking about right now, as well as all the shows, those tools are either placed there for you to use, or the other part of that is you come in and you go, hey, I'd like to have X, and it'll be put there. And LinkedIn is exactly the same thing. LinkedIn is IBGR Network. It's the same handle. And then we have our private group there is the IBGR Growth Community. Okay. We're getting ready to go back on the air. So here we go. 3. I'll do this the way we do in a radio station. 3, 2. And we're back. You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for today's show. This show is on how to start a consulting firm from scratch. And it's based upon the other 9 shows that we have done. We've detailed this out. And so we've talked about it from different aspects. Now I'm doing the how-to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now understand, if you're listening to this as a podcast, then you need to get the first version of it. All right. And so I covered a lot of the background material and how we got here. The quick review I'm going to do is a startup is not a business. A startup is an experiment. And what you've got to do is you've got to set your business up as an experiment so that as you begin to produce the first product or service that you're going to offer the customer, that you have designed it in a way that you can learn and improve. And once you've done that, then you can talk about the next stage, which is how do I build the infrastructure of a business so I can scale it. All right. But until you put something out there and the customer has a chance to play with it and potentially purchase it, then you don't have anything. In fact, when do you know that you've arrived, that you proved the business idea, you proved the product or service that you're offering? Here's your test. Is the cash flow that you have coming into the company from sales sufficient to pay all your bills, including yourself? That's number 1. And then number 2, is it predictable? When you get to that point, now you're ready to have the conversation to go, what else do we need to build? And what I offered to you in the first podcast or in the first segment of the show is that there are 10 core processes every business must put into place. They call them different things, but fundamentally, they're there. We're only taking the first 4 today because in a startup mode, you don't need all 10. You just need 4. If this works, then you build the others, and you build them in a sequence, in an order, and so that by the time the company gets to a certain point, everything's in place. That's one of the reasons why it's really difficult if you've hired people to come into a business who come from large corporations and you're in a startup, why most of them struggle, because managing a process is a different skill set than making one. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs have a difficult time making the transition as their company gets older and more mature. They have a difficult time running it because managing that is different. It's a different skill set and a different mindset than building it. All right. Now, so where we were and where I left it off is I'm going to take you through an agile process that we use, that I've used. And if I was going to build my consulting firm today, which I have, because IBGR in many ways is a consulting company, just offers its consulting on the air, is how would I do it? So this is mine. I got 10 steps. 1 is list the steps, lay them all out. Number 2 is research. Number 3, the first problem I've got to solve is what's your offer. Step 4 is problem or question. Number 2 is growing markets. Number 3 is Step 5, problem number 3 is what are the target industries or accounts you're going to go after? Step 6 here, problem number 4 is what's the profile of the perfect customer? And you can see what's happening is as you ask and answer these questions, you're able to handle the next one. So I put these in the order that I would do it. Okay. Step 7 is problem 5 or question 5, building my value ladder. And then step 8, problem 6 is creating a marketing and sales process. Step 9 is the 7th problem, and that's updating my CRM and all the existing systems. So now it's going to capture and measure what I've built. And then step number 10 is your first time that you sell this offer and you work it. Understand it's a test. And from that test, you're going to have to learn on what to do to upgrade it and to fix it and to do it for release. We're not going to cover that today because until you have something to test, I don't think it's worth the time that we have because what do we have? We have about 50 some odd minutes, about 56 minutes, 55 minutes together. And what I want to do is I want to maximize that time. Okay. You'll find the show notes at ibgr.network. That's ibgr.network. When you get there, go to the navigation bar, go to notes. And what you want to do is you want to type in CIB.10, building it from scratch. And the notes are not there if you're listening live, and they will be there if you're listening as a replay or as a podcast. They will be there. Okay. So list of project steps. I've just laid out my 10. Okay. Number 2 is the research. We talked about that before the break. I would do a number of things. One is I would look at Hoover's and Dun & Bradstreet, and I would get an account with them because they provide really good information. Now, Statista is another option, and they're more global than Hoover's and Dun & Bradstreet if you're looking for global business. But what you're looking for is a place that you can go to pose questions that we're going to be asking right here to get real-time data. What you don't want to do in these early stages is any swags or guesstimates. And a swag is a scientific wild-ass guess. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is that you want this research, this information as tight as you can get it. All right, so problem number 1 is what is your offer? Now, in the previous shows, we've talked about this, and that is basically what practice area are you going to take? Are you going to be in strategy? Are you going to be in OD? Are you going to be in operations management? Are you going to be in HR? Are you going to be in marketing? Are you going to be in sales? Are you going to be in service? Are you going to be in finance? Are you going to be in HR? In other words, what is it that you're looking to sell? Because all startups, well, I shouldn't say all, some start with, I don't know what we want to do because let's say I'm a coder. What I want to do is now find out what I want to code. But the vast majority of us are not there. Where we're at is, I think I can start a consulting firm on HR. Okay, so what's your offer? And kind of detail that out by going to the practice list. And if you want to go back to what the consulting practice list is, just type in at our website, ibgr.network, CIB, and I think it's 02 and 03. Or look at the entire series if you like, and you'll find that information. So what's your offer? And what I want to do is, when I do this, so I'll answer this first question, I also want to do a search out there for who else is doing it. If you say what I want to do is I want to run a marketing practice where I'm going to assume the duties of a marketing agency for my prospective clients, then what I want to do is I want to take a look at what's out there. I don't say necessarily you want to copy, but you want to do is you want to take a good look at it. Now, also, I would be taking a look at keywords. You look at these top sites, what are the keywords that they're using? And that may give you some ideas about where you want to go. Now, are we going to revisit this step or this question? We absolutely are. But we've got to start here. So you do your research on this, and you say, okay, this is what my offer is. All right, now step 4, which is the second problem. Okay, so now I have a reasonably good sense, as much as I possibly can, of what I want to sell. Now let's take a look at the market, because the market is going to redefine this. So if I'm looking at growing markets, I want to go, what markets are growing. Now, when I define markets, markets could be a region, like a continent. A region could be, it could be a particular part of a country. But I want to take a look at where are the pockets, because when I do my initial selling, I want to be in places where I have the highest probability of making the sale. And if you're going to not use virtual, and you're going to do, basically you're going to go eyeball to eyeball, then obviously you're going to be looking in some region that is where you're at or fairly contiguous. In other words, you're not going to have to travel a lot. If you're going to fly across the country, fly across any country in these early stages, I'd recommend don't do that, because those type of costs are just going to sap you dry. You've got to start fast. You got to do your homework. You got to do your research, but you got to start fast, because you're going to need the capital. You're going to need working capital to get you through the second phase of this, is when you start selling. And so how do I define a growing market? Well, one is the market is in growth, or the region is in growth. Number two is if I'm looking at it, I want to know what's projected for that market over, say, the next 18 months. Where is that growth going to be? The other question I'm going to ask is that no market is unified. No market, get my hands up here, is this one big piece like this. There we are. What I want to do is I want to look at markets where I can take little slices of each one of those, because I'm not running a multi-million-dollar company at the moment. I'm not running a billion-dollar company. So what niche, what piece of that can I take? And so I want to get a growing market in an area that I can touch, where it's possible to slice a piece of that off and kind of, I don't want to call it a monopoly, but can I become the dominant player in that market? You don't know if it's true, but what you want to do is you want to say to yourself, is this the place that I can, make a name for myself fairly quickly? All right. Now, based upon that decision, we go down to step number 5, which is the third problem, or the third question I need to answer. And that is, what industries and what accounts, meaning customers. Now, industries, you've got to look at what practice areas you've selected, and you have to take a look at what your expertise is. As we said in the first segment, is that if you're selling to large corporations, 2 things matter. One is your academic credentials, and 2 is your experience. In smaller markets, that's not as important. The first one. Yeah, they'll say, do you have any degrees? But what a smaller business owner wants to know is, hey, have you done this before? And so you need to say, okay, looking at all the industries that are growing that I can kind of niche into a small piece, there may be 3 or 4 industries where there is a great deal of overlap, right? That's a good place to start. When you isolate that, get a little bit excited. Now, the next piece of it is accounts. And what companies in there are people that I want to go after. Now, my thing is I never go after the top industry. And the reason for that is they may not be hungry enough. What I like to go after is the second or third industry. Who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4. I want to look at those, because especially if you're competitive like I am, I don't want to be number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. I want to be number 1. And so they are aggressively looking to raise their market share. Those are the companies that are going to have an interest, because how are they going to be listening to your first offer? They're going to be listening to it from the standpoint of, can this person move me along? Because since you're in your consulting business, you're probably not going to be making very many B2C, business to customer sales. You're going to be making almost entirely business to business sales. And if you're talking to another business owner, they may not use exactly the words I'm going to give you, but this is what's rattling around in their brain. And that is, how do they enhance my competitive advantage? And so somebody who is aggressively trying to get more market share and grow the company and raise their status are perfect customers, because they'll be listening to your offer going, how does that help me get to where I want to go? And when we get down to marketing and sales, that's going to be part of your messaging. All right. So once I've got a couple of companies, now what I want to do is I want to look at those organizations and say, all right, who in those organizations do I want to sell? Now, it's small business, and I'm assuming I'm talking to mostly people, consultants who are looking to go into small businesses, sell to small businesses, is that I'm probably selling to the owner. So now what can I collect on what that perfect customer is? Now, again, 20 years ago, this is a tough slog. Yeah, if it's a CEO of $1 billion firm, like Richard Branson, you probably get a profile on him pretty easy. But if it's a company that's in your local area, that data may not be that available. So here's where you use the internet to do searches. If they are smart business owners, here's what they've done. They have not only branded the company, but they branded themselves. Now, you remember that too when it comes to branding your business. They branded themselves. So I would start taking a look at the profiles, whether I found them in Facebook. You certainly can find them in LinkedIn. And I want to look at who they are, what they're looking for, because within there are probably people who match maybe my approach or my style, but people also expressing the need for what I have to offer. And I'm going to build a profile of that individual. Some of that profile is demographic. It could be, is it gender-based? In other words, I know a lot of women who are now selling to women entrepreneurs. So obviously, they're going to exclude the males from that. You could be agnostic and you don't care which gender, or you could be talking to older guys like me who are on the tail end of whatever business they're in. And what you're going to sell is exit strategies, helping them get their business put together so that they can put it on the market and sell it either to another buyer or merge with another company. So you make those decisions. Age group could be, because if I'm selling to boomers, it's different than selling to Gen X, which is different than selling to Gen Y, which is different than selling to Gen Z. Though Gen Z's usually, that population, the top age is around 26. So maybe I'm not there. So maybe it is Gen Y and Gen X are the two populations that I'm going to look for. All right, so I want to pull that in. I want to take a look at what company size I want to hit on. All right, so which companies my offer work. So for example, if I'm selling HR compliance, I think the small companies are a good place to go because they don't have an HR person. They've got somebody, it's typically the financial, whoever the accountant is in the company, if they have an internal accountant, but they usually have somebody at least that's handling accounts receivable and payable, that person has probably been tasked with HR. They don't know anything about HR. They don't know what's required. So that's a good place to say, okay, that's the profile I want. So you get the point here. Now I get down to step number 7, which is the fifth problem I got to answer. I wish I had numbered these the same, but I didn't. And that is, now let's take a look at the value ladder that you had put together. And we did a show on that, so you just take a look at it. I think that's 7 and 8, CIB.0708. But you just go to our website again, ibgr.network, and you go to the search bar and put in value ladder. And the idea here is that I want to have, at minimum, I want to have 3 levels of my offer. The offer I want to sell is the level 2 is my core offer. That's the one where I want to make the most of my sales. And that is where I'm providing everything pretty much that they need. No luxuries, no add-ons, but kind of the core. Level 1 is where I really give them the minimum viable product or service. And that's more than likely what you're designing. And so then level 3 of your offer is everything else put on top of it. Now, what that does for you, number 1, is it gives you level 1 gives you an entry level price that you can come in. And for the consulting business, because because you're selling to a market that doesn't have a lot of money, your ability to come in and sell high ticket items, which is you providing your time, isn't going to work. So what you want to do is you want to probably productize a lot of your knowledge. We talked about that in building an asset-based consulting firm. What you want to do here is create a lot of DIY products that have a low price point where it will help them out. And then if they want services on top of that, then they upgrade to level 2, where now you got the services in there. And because of how you bundled it, they don't know that they're paying you $100 or $150 or $200 an hour because of the way you bundled the price. But that level 1 gives you the opportunity to get in the door with them and build a relationship to sell level 2. Now, level 3, the reason you want to do that is you want to anchor level 2 price. I would make the price at level 3 higher. Like, for example, if you had price on level 1 is, say, $100, I would price level 2 at maybe $300 to $400. That's a bit of a leap, but not huge. Level 3, I would price at $1,500 to $2,000. And the idea behind that is they would, number one, to go, wow, that's a pretty good offer, but I can't afford it. But the second one, the middle one, looks like the best one. And so I want to look at my value ladder and I want to adjust it to the data that I have just collected. All right. And then finally, now I want to do is I want to create a marketing or sales process for if this is the market, this is the industry, this is the account, the company, this is the perfect customer that I believe right now I need to sell to, and that this is what my offer is. And I've worked these out in this particular order. Then what's my marketing and sales process to get that done? Now I'll put on the show notes ours. Our process is 7 steps in the sales, okay? You've got leads. And what are you doing around social media? Because one of the things you can take advantage of is the fact that social media is aggregating your customer base, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. The deal is you go to the social media where you believe the perfect customer is at. And you can find that out by simply, once you kind of get that profile, see how many people fit it. And you can find out in LinkedIn and you can find out in Facebook. Okay, so then the people who have an interest. So how are you going to touch them? Then the people who have an interest, these are qualified leads. They've taken some action because you want a CTA, a call to action, each one of those. So they have to do something, click something, etc. Now what I have is I have qualified leads. How am I going to handle the qualified leads? So in this particular case, what we use are 2 platforms. One is Hootsuite, which is a great way of posting on, you can automate your posting on all these different platforms, and we use MailChimp. And so those 2 methodologies work really well right now to see if we can't separate who we think may be interested from who is interested. And by the way, all of this is going into your CRM. And step 3 is people who have now responded to the second step. You now have suspects. In other words, you suspect they're going to buy because you're giving you the buying signals. So then I move over to number 4, and that's prospects. And again, I go back and I use Hootsuite and MailChimp now to write much more structured content to them to bring their interest up to the point where they're saying to you, okay, let's talk. I'm interested in what you're doing. They're not buying yet, but they've sent the buying signal that, yeah, talk to us. Okay, and then our next step here is where you close the deal. And then from there, you're moving on down to customer service. And so on the delivery side, what we're doing here, and by the way, we are using Hootsuite, MailChimp, and a CRM to get us to this point here. Then on the delivery side is what platform are you going to put them on? How are you going to deal with them? Okay, and so you got to make up your mind. We're going with Coach Accountable on our platform because it's a great way to manage the relationship automatically so that when we have a one-to-one, whether that one-to-one is in face-to-face, or that one-to-one is virtually, is that we're working off of a preset set of this is what you need, this is what I said we were going to do, and then let's work through it. And as you recall, in one of the shows that we did, we talked about FIT. FIT. That's another one that you can put into the search bar on our website at ibgr.network. And that stands for focus, improve, track. And that is my consulting model. Focus is, of all the things that we could do, where is the greatest piece of leverage? And leverage means that if we fix that one thing, what impact will that have on everything else? Then improvement is we have a plan. And that could be coaching, that could be consulting, that could be training. But how are we going to close the gap between where they are right now and where they want to be? And the tracking piece is how do I measure either progress or results? All right. And then finally, you have the service piece where if they've got any issues, they've got any problems, how are you going to deal with that? And we do that through our CRM. So that's our process. I'm not saying that that's what you got to go to, but that's the process that we use. And so finally, as you've done this, Now you're going to update your CRM to reflect what you've just done. So as you bring people in and you start talking to them, you can put them in the categories that you have decided, the steps that you have put together in terms of your marketing and sales process to say how we're going. And in the initial stages, this is where you have basically done your best to do your research and you have a reasonably good idea about what's going to work. But this is where you tweak it, because you may say, well, what we need to do now, if I get them here and they express some interest, here's what I got to send them. You get no response to that. Okay, that wasn't the right thing to do. So what else do we do? And you keep working on it until not only do you have the product or service, whatever it is you're going to deliver that they're going to pay money for, you have worked out in the test. You also have your CRM system that is now a powerful engine for how the business is being run. And of course, then we go out and we do a test out in the field with the customer. And I will talk about that in the next show about how to do the test in the field. You've delivered what you thought they wanted based upon everything that you've done, and you're beyond this is what you think. You're pretty certain of what you're delivering. And then how do I measure how that is working? How do I spot defects in that? How do I spot things that we did things that we didn't need to do? We didn't do things that we should have done, and what worked. And I begin to build a list that tells me not only how I'm going to run my marketing and sales and service process, it also tells me how am I going to upgrade this product. Because where you want to go is once you've done this first test, look at it as software. The first time you built it, it's 1.0. What happens in 1.0 is that if you're in the software business, everybody internal to the company uses the software to see whatever bugs they can find. Now, of course, you're not going to find everything, but you're going to get the big stuff. Then what happens? You go to a 2.0 release. And if any of you are like big into, say, Linux or open source software, how many times have you downloaded a beta to test it out? And they're using you as a test. All right. And so what you're basically going to turn out that first time is a beta. Now, when you're done and you've upgraded, what do you have? You have 3.0 ready for release. And so those are the steps. If you want to create a consulting firm, I would say to you, a month is all this should take. If you spend money in a few places, because the only places you got to spend money really is on the research area and getting a couple platforms, I think you're there. So let me kind of review what we're doing in product development, because we don't know exactly what we need to have. Product to service development is that we're going to answer these questions. What's your offer? Where are the growing markets? Within those growing markets, where's the target industries and accounts? Based upon the accounts, what is the profile of a perfect customer as I see it right now today? How does that fit the value ladder that I put together in terms of sales? Because I want to start selling levels 1 and 2. I want to have 3 there to anchor my pricing. Then I want to create a process for marketing and sales. And then I want basically to go out and test it. All right. I don't have a lot of time left, so I got to close this out. The show notes will be ready. The links will be in it. And if you got any questions, put it into LinkedIn or put it into into Facebook. Yeah, those guys. Put it in there, and I'll be looking at it. So with that, I greatly appreciate you either listening on the air or if you've been with me on Facebook or LinkedIn watching it. I know watching me is not great fun, but I've been convinced that I got to do videos. I always thought I was just got to be the voice of the radio station and the network, and now I got to be a face. So I'm not happy about that. But, in business, you're the business owner. You do the things you got to do. So with that, greatly appreciate you listening. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for the show. This is a show or podcast, CIB.10, building your consulting firm from scratch. Catch you next week. All right. For anybody who's still out there, and if you're not out there live, you're going to be looking at the video. What I'll do for you is that I will go ahead and put everything up into the show notes, and it'll be there sometime today as soon as I look at my schedule or what else needs to be done. So I greatly appreciate you listening. Any comments, anything you need or want, please do that. And I think the best thing that you could do for yourself and your business is simply go to IBGR Network on Facebook or IBGR Network on LinkedIn. Join the respective private groups. On LinkedIn, it's called the IBGR Growth Community. On Facebook, it's Build Your Business Today or Build My Business Today. Again, I get confused on the pronoun, but it's right there. If you join it, Now you're on the inside, and now we can begin to have a conversation. So if you're looking to grow a consulting firm, please get in there. I would love to do that because I've built 5 of them. One of them bombed. It was a miserable failure. It wasn't my first one. My first one was a zombie, so that's 2. I had 2 incredibly successful ones. So I had a zombie, 2 successful, and a bomb. Okay, so I've run the gamut. And the last one is a work in progress, and you're watching it build as we go. We started off using this particular format that I just gave you. We started off in April of last year in one country with 1 host and 1 listener. Now, the listeners are in 1,000. We're in 178 countries, and we're close to 30 hosts. Not bad. With that, thanks for listening, and reach out to me. I'm here to help you. Take care.